The navigation display showed it clearly. A small section of space marked in deep red with a single word that made veteran pilots nervous. Forbidden. Rian had been working as a junior diplomat for 3 months now, and every time he looked at the star charts, that red zone caught his attention. "Why is that system restricted?" he asked Ambassador Trell during their daily briefing. Trell barely glanced at the screen. His blue skin darkened slightly, which meant discomfort among his species. "Old regulations, nothing you need to worry about." "But sir, the restriction covers an entire solar system. That seems excessive for just old regulations." "Drop it, Rian." Trell's voice carried an edge that ended the conversation. The diplomatic vessel Harmony's call cruised through empty space, carrying representatives from 12 different species. Rian shared quarters with a Chitauri engineer whose carapace clicked whenever she moved, and a Lumen whose crystalline body hummed with stored light energy. They were heading to mediate a mining dispute in the outer territories. 3 days into their journey, the ship's sensors picked up something unusual. Multiple vessels operating near the boundary of the Forbidden Zone. "Identify those ships," Captain Morell ordered from the command center. The sensor officer, a gaseous Vrel floating inside a containment suit, checked the readings. "Vortian Commerce Guild, looks like mining equipment. They're awfully close to the restricted area." Trell frowned. "Hail them." The view screen flickered to life, showing a broad-shouldered alien with green scales and too many teeth. "This is Gresh, Fleet Coordinator for Vortian Mining. What do you want?" "You're operating dangerously close to restricted space," Trell said firmly. "I suggest you move your operation elsewhere." Gresh laughed, a harsh sound that grated on Rian's ears. "Restricted? Do you know how much platinum-grade ore is in those asteroids? I'm not leaving because of some 1,000-year-old superstition." "It's not a superstition. It's council law. Council law written by cowards who are afraid of their own shadows. There's nothing dangerous about that system. Just an isolated world with barely any emissions, probably extinct by now." Rian watched Trell's expression carefully. The ambassador looked genuinely worried, not angry. That was strange. "Gresh, I'm ordering you to withdraw. You don't have authority over commercial vessels in unclaimed space. We're not doing anything illegal, not technically." Gresh's smile widened. "In fact, I think we'll move a bit closer, better ore concentrations that way." The communication cut off. Rian could see the mining ships on the display, 5 large vessels with smaller support craft surrounding them. They were moving steadily toward the red boundary line. "Should we stop them?" Captain Morell asked. Trell shook his head slowly. "We can't, not without starting a diplomatic incident with the Commerce Guild. All we can do is file a report and hope they come to their senses." "What's really in that system?" Rian asked quietly. For a long moment, Trell didn't answer. Finally, he said, "A species we made a terrible mistake with long ago. The restriction exists to prevent another mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind where you underestimate someone because they seem weak, and then discover exactly how strong they actually are." The next 6 hours passed in tense silence. The mining fleet crossed the boundary. Nothing happened immediately. Gresh sent a mocking message saying he'd found the mother lode and the council could file their complaints in triplicate. Then the sensors started showing anomalies. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures near the mining fleet," the Vrel officer reported. "Some kind of propulsion system, small craft, very fast." "How many?" Morell demanded. "Just one, sir, but it's moving in patterns I've never seen before." On the display, Rian could see the mining ships continuing their work, completely unaware. The small craft circled them at a distance, observing. Gresh's voice came over the open channel again, but this time there was no mockery. "Attention, Harmony's call. We have an unidentified vessel approaching our position, requesting identification." "That's not one of ours," Morell said. "Unknown vessel, this is Gresh of Vortian Mining. Identify yourself immediately or we will open fire." A new voice came through the speakers. Female, calm, with a strange accent Rian had never heard before. Vortian Mining Fleet, this is Captain Olivia Price of the Terran Border Guard. You have violated the Accord of Terra by entering restricted space. Power down your vessels and prepare to be escorted out. Terran, Gresh sounded confused. There's no such species in the galactic database. You're probably some pirate. Trying to scare us off this claim? We're not leaving. I'm giving you one warning, Captain Gresh. Leave now or we will remove you. Gresh laughed. You and what fleet? I count one tiny ship against 5 mining vessels and 20 support craft. Do the math, pirate. Math was never my favorite subject, the human voice replied. I prefer practical demonstrations. The mining fleet opened fire. Rian watched in horror as dozens of weapons locked onto the small craft, but the ship moved like water, flowing between the targeting beams with impossible grace. Not a single shot connected. Then the human ship fired once, just once. Every single mining vessel went dark simultaneously. Engines, weapons, lights, communications, everything died in the same instant. What just happened? Rian whispered. The human voice came back on the channel, now broadcasting on every frequency. Vortian Fleet, your crews are unharmed. You will remain in your current position. Medical assistance will arrive shortly to ensure everyone stays healthy during your wait. A recovery team will collect you in 72 hours. Your ships will be returned once you're safely outside restricted space. This incident will be reported to the Galactic Council. End transmission. The small craft vanished from sensors, moving faster than their equipment could track. Trell sat down heavily in his chair. Get me Council Archivist Nella immediately. We need to access the sealed records, now. Rian stared at the disabled fleet drifting helplessly in space. Sir, what are the Terrans? The species we tried to conquer, Trell said quietly, and the reason the Empire learned humility. Council Archivist Nella arrived within hours, her ancient form moving slowly through the ship's corridors. She belonged to one of the oldest species in the galaxy, the Keepers, who lived for thousands of years and remembered everything they experienced. Her 6 eyes blinked in sequence as she settled into the briefing room. You understand what you're asking, she said to Trell. These records were sealed by unanimous council vote. Opening them requires extraordinary circumstances. A Commerce Guild fleet just violated Terran space, Trell replied. The humans responded. I'd say that qualifies. Nella's skin rippled with patterns that indicated deep concern. Very well, but once you see this, you cannot unsee it. The shame belongs to all of us. She activated a holographic display. Ancient images flickered to life, showing a younger galaxy, one where the Galactic Empire expanded aggressively across the stars. Rian leaned forward, fascinated. 1,247 years ago, Nella began, our scouts discovered a world orbiting a yellow star. Initial scans showed a Class 3 civilization. They had achieved basic spaceflight, nuclear technology, and primitive computers, perfect targets for subjugation, according to the Empire's doctrine at the time. The hologram showed a blue and green planet, beautiful and vibrant with life. Fleet Commander Harrock led the invasion force. 50 warships, the pride of the Imperial Navy. We expected easy victory. The humans had no energy shields, no faster-than-light weapons, no unified planetary government. They fought among themselves constantly. We thought they would crumble. Images of the human world appeared. Cities, vast and sprawling, oceans covering most of the surface. Rian could see the appeal. Rich resources, established infrastructure, a population that could be put to work serving the Empire. First contact occurred on what the humans called June 15th. Harrock's flagship entered orbit and broadcast a simple message: surrender or be destroyed. The humans responded by inviting us to land a diplomatic team. Nella paused the recording. This is where we made our first mistake. We interpreted their invitation as weakness. We sent a delegation, but Harrock kept his weapons locked on 3 of their largest population centers as insurance. The hologram showed the human delegation. They looked fragile. Bipedal, no natural armor, no claws or fangs. Soft skin that wouldn't stop even a basic energy weapon. They wore simple clothes and carried data tablets instead of weapons. The humans gave a presentation, Nella continued. They showed us their history, thousands of years of warfare, ice ages that nearly destroyed them, plagues that killed half their population, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, predators that hunted them when they were still primitive. They survived all of it. Rian watched the historical images flash past. Humans fighting with crude weapons. Humans building shelters against impossible cold. Humans crossing vast oceans in wooden boats, exploring their world despite the dangers. Harrock wasn't impressed, so the humans showed him something else, their literature there. Stories, every culture on their planet had legends about fighting impossible odds. Heroes who never surrendered. Protectors who stood against darkness even when death was certain. Warriors who chose to die rather than abandon the helpless. One of the humans in the recording spoke, a woman with short dark hair and calm eyes. The translation appeared below her words. "We don't want war," she said. "We've seen enough war to last us 1,000,000 years, but we need you to understand something about my species. We are persistence hunters. Our ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We don't give up, we don't stop, and we never ever forget." Harrock's voice came through the recording, arrogant and dismissive. "Primitive philosophy won't save you from modern weapons. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. After that, we will demonstrate what resistance costs." The human woman nodded slowly. 24 hours, we'll use that time wisely. Nella stopped the playback again. The delegation left peacefully. Harrock was certain of victory. His ships maintained their targeting locks. His troops prepared for planetary assault. And then, 6 hours later, every single Imperial vessel suffered simultaneous critical systems failure. What? Rian couldn't believe what he was hearing. Life support weapons, engines, communications. Everything went offline at exactly the same moment across 50 warships. Harrock's flagship went dark. Ships began drifting out of orbit. The crew was minutes away from suffocating when emergency systems kicked in. The hologram showed the chaos. Imperial officers panicking, trying desperately to understand what had happened. And then, small human craft appearing, launching rescue operations to stabilize the dying ships. The humans had infiltrated our computer systems during the peaceful first contact, Nella explained. Their delegation carried sophisticated hacking tools disguised as simple data tablets. While they were showing us their history, they were uploading dormant code into every ship's network. 6 hours later, that code activated. "They could have killed everyone," Rian whispered. "Exactly. They proved they could destroy the entire invasion fleet without firing a single shot. And then they proved something even more terrifying. They chose not to. Human vessels appeared and began rescuing Imperial crews. They repaired life support systems. They provided medical assistance. They saved the lives of the people who had come to conquer them." Nella's 6 eyes focused on Rian. "Do you understand what that means? They demonstrated the capacity for total victory and the wisdom to choose mercy." Harrock realized he hadn't been fighting primitives. He'd been fighting a species that had turned survival into an art form. A species that could kill you or save you, and you'd never know which until they decided. The recording showed Harrock's face. The arrogant commander looked broken, humbled in a way Rian had never seen in an Imperial officer. "Harrock sued for peace immediately," Nella said. "Not surrender, peace, because the humans didn't want our submission. They wanted something much more valuable." "What did they want?" Rian asked. Nella smiled sadly. "They wanted us to leave them alone, and in exchange they offered to protect us from something far worse than their own power." "Protect us from what?" "From the things that lurk at the edge of galactic space, the things we couldn't defeat ourselves." Nella's hologram shifted to show a different scene. Deep space, far from any inhabited system. The image quality was poor, filled with static and distortion that spoke of distances beyond normal communication range. "The breach," Nella said quietly. "At the edge of our galaxy there are tears in space itself. We don't know what caused them. Ancient wars, perhaps, natural phenomena, it doesn't matter. What matters is what comes through those tears." The hologram showed something that made Rian's blood run cold. Massive shapes moving in the darkness, forms that hurt to look at because they didn't follow proper geometry. Things that existed partially in their dimension and partially somewhere else. "We call them the breach entities. They've been trying to enter our galaxy for millennia. The Empire fought them for centuries, losing thousands of ships and millions of lives. We could barely hold them back, and we were losing ground every year." Images flashed past showing battle after battle. Imperial fleets engaging the entities with every weapon they possessed. Sometimes they won. More often they retreated. The entities were relentless, incomprehensible, and seemingly infinite in number. During the peace negotiations with Earth, Harrock was desperate. The war with the breach was draining the Empire. We needed every resource, every ship, every soldier, and here was this planet that had just humiliated our finest fleet without firing a shot. He decided to be honest with them. The recording showed the negotiation chamber. Harrock sat across from the human delegation, looking exhausted and defeated. The same woman from before listened as he explained the Empire's situation. "We're dying," Harrock said in the recording. "Not from your weapons, from theirs. We can't stop them. Every year they push deeper into our territory. Every year we lose more worlds. If this continues, the Empire will fall within a century." The human woman studied him carefully. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because I'm hoping you'll accept our surrender and help us. Your species clearly has capabilities we don't understand. Maybe you can succeed where we've failed." "You want us to fight your war?" "I want you to save the galaxy, including your own world." The woman leaned back in her chair. "Let me make sure I understand. You came here to conquer us. We disabled your fleet, and now you want our help fighting monsters from beyond space." "Yes." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at her fellow humans. They had a brief discussion in their own language. Finally, she turned back to Harrock. "We'll need to see the breach for ourselves. Send us all your data. Every battle report, every scan, every analysis. Give us 2 weeks." Nella paused the recording. Harrock agreed he had no choice. The humans spent those 2 weeks doing what they do best. They studied, they analyzed, they found patterns we'd missed in centuries of fighting, and then they made an offer. The hologram showed a different meeting. The human woman presented a document to the council. "This is the Accord of Terra," Nella explained. "The humans demanded complete autonomy. Earth and its entire solar system would be off-limits to all galactic species. No trade, no tourism, no contact of any kind without human permission. In exchange, they offered to deploy forces to guard the breach." "How many forces?" Rian asked. 1,000 volunteers. 1,000 against an infinite threat. That's what the council said. The humans insisted it would be enough. They had conditions, though. They wanted access to galactic medical technology, scientific databases, and cultural exchanges. They wanted to learn from us while remaining separate from us. The council thought they were insane, but we were desperate enough to agree. The recording showed human ships arriving at the breach. Small vessels, nothing like the massive warships the Empire used. They looked fragile and inadequate against the entities lurking in the darkness. The first engagement happened 3 days after the humans arrived. A major incursion, 12 entities breaking through simultaneously. The Empire had lost 15 ships the last time that happened. We expected the humans to be slaughtered. The hologram showed the battle. The human ships moved in ways that defied standard tactics. They didn't form defensive lines or try to overpower the entities. Instead, they studied them in real time, adapting their approach for each individual creature. "They didn't just fight," Nella said with something like awe in her voice. "They hunted. Every entity that came through, they analyzed its movement patterns, its energy signature, its weak points. They shared data between ships instantly, learning and evolving their tactics faster than the entities could adapt. Rian watched as the human ships darted around the massive creatures, striking at precise points with surgical accuracy. When an entity tried to retreat back through the breach, the humans pursued it. When another entity tried to slip past toward inhabited space, they intercepted it before it could gain momentum. The battle lasted 47 hours. All 12 entities were destroyed or driven back. The humans lost 2 ships, just 2. The Empire would have lost 20 and considered it a victory. The recording showed the aftermath. Human crews recovering their dead from the destroyed vessels. Even through the static, Rian could see the grief on their faces. Over the next 6 months, the incursions decreased dramatically. The entities learned quickly. Whatever intelligence guided them realized that entering this galaxy meant facing humans. The things we'd been fighting for centuries started to avoid us. Because of 1,000 humans. Because those 1,000 humans proved something the entities hadn't encountered before. Prey that fights back intelligently. Prey that learns. Prey that will chase you back into your own domain and make you regret ever emerging. Nella closed the hologram. The Accord has held for over a millennium. The humans maintain their vigil at the breach. They rotate forces every 5 years, always keeping 1,000 guards on station. They've never asked for more than we originally agreed to provide. They've never threatened us. They've never broken the treaty. And we repay them by making their home forbidden, Rian said. We repay them by respecting their wishes. They wanted isolation. They wanted to develop on their own terms. And most importantly, they wanted to ensure that if they ever needed to abandon the breach and return home, no one would be in their way. Why would they need to abandon it? Nella's expression turned grim. Because if someone is stupid enough to make humanity choose between protecting us and protecting their own world, they'll choose Earth. And without them at the breach, everything ends. The briefing room fell silent after Nella finished her explanation. Rian tried to process everything he'd learned. An entire species guarding the galaxy from horrors beyond comprehension, asking only to be left alone in return. And Gresh had just violated that sacred agreement. We need to recover the mining fleet, Trell said finally, before this becomes a larger incident. The humans said they'd return the ships in 72 hours, Nella reminded him. I suggest we trust them to keep their word. They always have. What about Gresh and his crews? Are they safe? The humans don't harm unnecessarily. They proved that 1,200 years ago. The crews are probably safer than they would be on their own ships. Rian stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, human guards patrolled the edge of known space, fighting things he couldn't imagine. Why don't we help them? Surely other species could assist at the breach. Nella made a sound that might have been a laugh. Many offered, especially in the early years. The humans declined. They said they had developed specific tactics that worked for their way of thinking. Adding other species would require retraining, new communication protocols, and more complexity than benefit. That sounds like an excuse. Perhaps they understood something we didn't. Humans work together in ways we don't fully comprehend. They have words for it. Pack bonding, they call it. Unit cohesion. Brotherhood. They form connections with each other that make them more effective as a group than the sum of their individual abilities. Ambassador Trell joined Rian at the viewport. I met a human once about 50 years ago, she was. Rotating off breach duty, stopping at a neutral station for supplies. I asked her why they did it, why they risked their lives for species that tried to conquer them. What did she say? She said that holding grudges was exhausting and someone had to guard the door. Then she asked me if I had children. I told her yes, 3 offspring. She smiled and said that was her answer. She was guarding the door so my children wouldn't have to. Rian felt something twist in his chest. We don't deserve them. No, Trell agreed. We don't. That's why we honor the Accord. It's the least we can do. The ship's communication system chimed. Captain Morell's voice came through. Sirs, we're receiving a transmission from the mining fleet's location. It's Captain Price of the Terran Border Guard. Put her through, Trell ordered. The view screen activated, showing a human woman in a simple dark uniform. She had short brown hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Captain Olivia Price looked tired but alert, the expression of someone who'd worked long hours and expected to work many more. Ambassador Trell, she said with a slight nod. I'm transmitting the full incident report to your ship. The Vortian crews are unharmed. We've provided them with supplies and entertainment to make their wait comfortable. Their ships will be towed to the boundary line in 68 hours. Thank you, Captain. I apologize for the violation. It was unauthorized and against Council regulations. I know, we monitored your conversation with their fleet coordinator. You tried to warn him. She paused. I'm more concerned about why he thought he could ignore the restriction. Has the Accord become common knowledge again, or are people forgetting why it exists? Trell glanced at Nella before answering. The younger generations don't remember. The Accord is taught as ancient history, not living policy. Some view it as superstition. Price's expression hardened slightly. Superstition keeps people alive sometimes. Respect keeps agreements intact. Agreed, we're working to reinforce the importance of the restriction. This incident will be used as a teaching example. See that it is. Price looked directly at Rian, though she'd never been introduced to him. You're young, you probably wondered why a small section of space warranted such strict protection. Do you understand now? Rian stepped closer to the screen. Archivist Nella shared the historical records. I understand that humanity guards the breach and wants isolation. But I don't understand why you do it. Why guard people who tried to destroy you? Price was quiet for a moment. Because the alternative is worse. If we let the breach entities through out of spite, they'd eventually reach Earth. We're not protecting you from kindness. We're protecting everyone, including ourselves, from extinction. It just happens that protecting ourselves means protecting you too. That's very practical. We're a practical species. Idealism gets you killed. Pragmatism keeps you alive. She glanced at something off-screen. I need to return to patrol. The incident report contains recommendations for preventing future violations. I suggest you read them carefully. One more question, Captain, Rian said quickly. Is it true that humans would abandon the breach if forced to choose between it and Earth? Price met his eyes steadily. Every species has a home they'd die to protect. Earth is ours. We guard the breach because it protects Earth. But if someone threatened our world directly, yes, we'd come home, wouldn't you? She didn't wait for an answer. The transmission ended. Nella accessed the incident report and began reading through it. Her skin patterns shifted to show surprise. The recommendations are detailed, very detailed. They're suggesting we establish a buffer zone, increase patrols, and implement an education program about the Accord. There are also technical specifications for detection systems that would alert us to unauthorized approaches. They're helping us protect their own borders, Trell said thoughtfully. They could just disable any ship that gets close, but instead they're teaching us how to police ourselves. That's the human way, Nella replied. They prefer prevention to punishment, give people the tools to make good choices, and most will choose correctly. The communication system chimed again. This time it was a distress signal, faint and distant. Captain Morell's voice was tense. Sirs, we're detecting breach entity signatures, 3 of them approximately 40 light-years from our position. They're moving toward the Dalaran colonies. Rian's heart raced. Can we intercept? Not with our weapons. We'd be destroyed in seconds. Nella moved faster than Rian had seen her move before. Contact the Terran border guard immediately. This is exactly what they're positioned for. Before Morell could respond, a new voice came through the speakers. Calm, professional, already in motion. Terran guard to Harmony's call. We've detected the incursion. 4 patrol ships are en route. Estimated intercept in 20 minutes. Recommend all civilian vessels maintain current position and await clearance. Ambassador Trell stepped forward. Captain Price, 3 entities against 4 ships. Do you need support? There was a brief pause. Then Price responded, and Rian could hear the slightest hint of amusement in her voice. Ambassador, we appreciate the offer, but this is what we train for. Just keep your distance and let us work. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. The Harmony's call maintained its position while long-range sensors tracked the approaching entities. Rian watched the displays with growing dread. The creatures were massive, each one larger than any ship in the Imperial fleet. They moved through space in ways that violated physics, phasing partially out of normal dimensions. Terran ships entering sensor range, the Vrel officer reported. 4 small craft appeared on the display. Compared to the entities, they looked like insects facing dragons. Each human ship was maybe a tenth the size of a standard Imperial frigate. They carried no visible heavy weapons, no massive shield generators, no armor plating thick enough to withstand entity attacks. "This is suicide," Captain Morell whispered. Nella's skin patterns showed certainty. "Watch and learn." The human ships spread out in a formation that made no tactical sense to Rian. They weren't forming a defensive wall or concentrating their firepower. Instead, they positioned themselves at odd angles around the approaching entities, maintaining distance but staying close enough to engage. "All ships, this is Guardian 1, Price's voice came through clearly. "Standard dispersal pattern. Remember, these are Class 2 entities. They phase shift when threatened. Wait for solidification before engaging primary targets." Guardian 3 confirms, running analysis now. Guardian 4 has lock on entity secondary signatures, preparing to flush. Rian had no idea what any of that meant. He glanced at Nella, who was watching with all 6 eyes focused intently. The entities moved closer to the Dalaran colonies. Billions of lives hung in the balance. The human ships began their attack, but it wasn't like any battle Rian had witnessed. They didn't simply fire weapons and hope to hit. Instead, they seemed to be hurting the entities, forcing them to move in specific directions. Guardian 2, deploy frequency disruptor. Let's see if we can keep them solid. One of the human ships released a pulse of energy that made the sensor displays flicker. The entities shuddered, their forms becoming more stable and less ethereal. Confirmed solidification. Guardian 3, you're clear for penetration strike. A different ship accelerated forward with impossible speed, firing a concentrated beam at one of the entities. The shot punched through the creature's outer layer, causing it to convulse and change color. Direct hit. Entity 1 is shifting to defensive posture. Guardian 4, watch for the split. On it. The wounded entity began to divide itself, a tactic Rian had seen in the historical records. One creature becoming 2, both capable of continuing the attack. But the humans had anticipated this. Split confirmed. Guardian 1 and 2 take the primary mass, 3 and 4 containment on the secondary. The ships moved like dancers, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. They coordinated without hesitation, adjusting their tactics in real time as the entities responded. When one entity tried to phase out of normal space, the humans hit it with another disruptor pulse, forcing it to remain vulnerable. When another attempted to rush toward the colonies, 2 ships cut it off while the other 2 maintained pressure on the remaining threats. Entity 2 is attempting breach protocol. Don't let it open a rift. Guardian 4 engaging, targeting the manifestation point. Rian saw one of the entities begin to glow with sickly light, reality warping around it. Before it could complete whatever it was doing, the human ship fired a weapon that seemed to collapse the distortion, forcing the entity back into normal space. Breach attempt failed. Entity 2 is destabilizing. Finish it. 3 human ships converged on the wounded entity, their weapons firing in perfect synchronization. The creature shuddered once, twice, and then came apart, its mass dissolving into particles that dispersed harmlessly into space. Entity 2 neutralized, redirecting to support 3 and 4. The battle continued for another 10 minutes, though it felt both longer and shorter. The humans fought with precision that bordered on artistic. They wasted no shots, made no unnecessary movements, and communicated with an efficiency that suggested they'd fought together for years. The second entity fell when the humans forced it into a spatial anomaly of their own creation, crushing it between layers of folded space. The technique was beyond anything in the Imperial arsenal. The third entity, perhaps recognizing it was outmatched, attempted to flee back toward the breach. The humans pursued without hesitation. Guardian 1 to Harmony's call, "We're chasing the retreating entity. Maintain your position. This should only take a few more minutes." Trell activated the communication system. "Captain Price, the threat to the colonies is neutralized. You don't need to pursue." "Ambassador, if we let it escape, it reports back to whatever coordinates the incursions. They learn from each encounter. Better to eliminate it now than face an adapted version later." The human ships vanished from sensors, moving faster than the Harmony's call could track. Several minutes passed in tense silence. Then Price's voice returned. "Entity 3 neutralized. Sector is clear. We're conducting a final sweep to ensure no residual tears in the spatial fabric. You're cleared to continue your route to the Dalaran system. They'll want to know what almost happened." "Thank you, Captain. You saved billions of lives today." "Just another day at the office, Ambassador. Terran border guard out." The human ships remained on sensors for a few more minutes, conducting their sweep as promised. Then they departed, heading back toward their patrol route near the breach. Rian realized he'd been holding his breath. He released it slowly, trying to process what he'd witnessed. "They make it look easy." "It's not," Nella said quietly. "Each of those pilots has trained for years. They study entity behavior constantly, developing new tactics for every variation they encounter. What you saw was the result of 1,000 years of dedicated service." "How many humans have died guarding the breach?" Rian asked. Nella's skin patterns shifted to a somber dark blue. "The exact number is classified at humanity's request, but I can tell you that every 5 years, when they rotate new guards to the breach, there are always fewer returning than departed. The entities take their toll. The humans accept those losses as the price of protecting the galaxy." Captain Morell appeared on the internal view screen. "Sirs, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Vortian mining fleet. Gresh is demanding to speak with us." Trell sighed, "Put him through." Gresh appeared, and he looked very different from his earlier arrogant self. His scales had paled, and his multiple eyes were wide. "Ambassador, I need to speak with you about what I saw." "What did you see, Gresh?" "The humans, while we were waiting in our disabled ships, they came aboard to check on us. They were polite, professional. They brought us food and medical supplies. They answered our questions." He paused. "And they told us about the breach, about what they fight, about why the restriction exists." "I see. I violated the accord because I thought it was an old law protecting nothing important. I was wrong. I was so wrong." Gresh's voice cracked slightly. "They could have killed us all. Instead, they saved us from our own stupidity. I want to formally apologize to the Council and to the Terran border guard." Rian felt a spark of hope. Maybe this incident would serve its purpose after all. The Council chamber buzzed with activity. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the circular hall, all of them discussing the incident at the Terran border. Rian stood beside Ambassador Trell, watching as Archivist Nella prepared to address the assembly. Gresh was present too, standing in the petitioner's circle. The mining fleet coordinator looked diminished somehow, his earlier confidence completely gone. The past 3 days waiting for his ship to be returned had changed him fundamentally. "Order," the council speaker called out. "We are here to address the violation of the Accord of Terra and determine appropriate consequences." Nella stepped forward, her ancient form commanding immediate respect. "Before we discuss consequences, I propose we discuss understanding. How many in this chamber actually know why the Accord exists?" Silence fell. A few older representatives raised their appendages. The vast majority did not. "This is the problem," Nella continued. "We've allowed the Accord to become legend rather than living policy. We've stopped teaching our youth why Terran space is restricted. We've failed in our duty to remember." She activated the holographic display, showing the same historical records she'd shown Rian. The council watched in silence as the story unfolded. The attempted conquest of Earth, humanity's demonstration of overwhelming capability paired with deliberate mercy. The negotiations that followed, the deployment to the breach. When the display reached the recent entity battle, Nella paused. This engagement occurred 5 days ago. 3 Class II entities heading for the Dalaran colonies. 4 human ships intercepted and neutralized all threats in under 30 minutes. 0 civilian casualties. 0 Imperial ship losses. The humans lost nothing and asked for nothing in return. She gestured to Gresh. This individual violated the Accord through ignorance and greed. The humans could have destroyed his entire fleet. Instead, they disabled the ships, ensured crew safety, and returned everything intact. They even provided detailed reports on preventing future violations. Gresh stepped forward when prompted. His voice was steady but quiet. "I thought the restriction was outdated. I believed humans were either extinct or irrelevant. I was catastrophically wrong on both counts." "Tell them what you told me," Nella encouraged. "While we were waiting for retrieval, the humans sent medical teams to check on my crews. They were professional and kind. One of them, a young officer named Amy Roberts, explained what they do at the breach. She showed me footage of entity battles. She told me about the guards who don't come home." Gresh's voice wavered. "She said her brother was one of them, died holding a rift closed so others could escape. She still serves because someone has to." He looked around the chamber. "I violated sacred space because I didn't understand it was sacred. The humans had every right to punish us severely. Instead, they educated us. They want us to understand, not just obey. That's more mercy than we deserve." A representative from the Chitauri delegation stood. "What consequences do you propose for this violation?" The council speaker consulted his display. "The humans have submitted their recommendation." "Which is?" "No punishment. They suggest we implement better education programs and increase patrol presence near the boundary. They believe this was a failure of institutional memory, not malicious intent." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Rian wasn't surprised. Everything he'd learned about humans suggested they'd respond exactly this way. Another representative stood. "I propose we do more than just accept their recommendation. I propose we establish an annual Remembrance Day. A day when all species teach their children about the Accord, about human sacrifice, and about why we owe them our gratitude." The motion passed unanimously. 3 weeks later, Rian found himself on a transport heading toward the breach. He'd requested permission to visit the human guard station, and surprisingly, it had been granted. Apparently, the humans allowed occasional diplomatic visits, though they were rare. The station itself was smaller than he'd expected. A simple structure orbiting at the edge of known space, positioned to monitor the tiers in reality that spawned the entities. Human ships came and went on patrol routes, their movements precise and purposeful. Captain Olivia Price met him at the docking port. "Ambassador's assistant Rian, welcome to Sentinel Station. I'll be honest, we don't get many visitors." "Thank you for allowing me to come." She led him through corridors that were functional rather than decorative. Crew members passed by, nodding to Price and eyeing Rian with curiosity. They all looked tired, alert and competent, but carrying the weight of constant vigilance. "I wanted to see it for myself," Rian explained. "The place where humanity stands guard." "It's not glamorous," Price warned. "Mostly it's long hours of monitoring and brief moments of terror when something comes through." They reached an observation deck. Through the reinforced windows, Rian could see the breach. Tiers in space that glowed with sickly light, reality twisted and wrong. Even looking at them made him feel ill. "How do you stand it?" he asked. Being this close to that, knowing what might come through at any moment. Price was quiet for a moment. Someone asked me that once before, an ambassador actually about 50 years ago. What did you tell him? I told him I have nieces and nephews back on Earth. 3 of them, last I checked. They're growing up on a world that doesn't have to worry about entities tearing through their cities. That's worth being uncomfortable. Rian watched a patrol ship launch from the station. Do you ever resent us? We tried to conquer you and now you protect us. Resent implies we think about you more than we do, Price said bluntly. No offense, but we're not guarding the breach for you. We're guarding it for us, for Earth, for humanity's future. You just happen to benefit from that. That's refreshingly honest. We're a honest species when it matters. Deception is useful tactically, but strategically it just creates problems. She gestured to the breach. Out here, problems get people killed, so we stay honest, stay sharp, and stay alive. An alarm chimed softly. Price checked her communication device. Excuse me, we have a minor incursion, Class 1 entity, small enough that we can handle it with 2 ships, but I should coordinate. Rian watched her work. She was calm, professional, giving orders that sent human ships into danger without hesitation. The crews responded with equal professionalism, treating mortal peril as routine business. The entity was neutralized in under 5 minutes. Later, as Rian prepared to depart, Price walked him back to his transport. Did you find what you were looking for? I think so. I wanted to understand why the Accord matters, why respecting Terran space is so important. And because you chose isolation not from fear of us, but to protect yourselves. And in protecting yourselves, you protect all of us. The restriction isn't about keeping us out. It's about letting you do what you do best without interference. Price smiled slightly. You're smarter than the average diplomat. Most never get past thinking we're arrogant for wanting to be left alone. You're not arrogant, you're just honest about priorities. Exactly, Earth first, galaxy second. But as long as protecting Earth means protecting the galaxy, everyone wins. She extended her hand in the human gesture of farewell. Safe travels, Rian, and thank you for actually trying to understand. Rian took her hand, surprised by the firm grip. Thank you for everything you do. As his transport pulled away from Sentinel Station, he looked back at the human outpost positioned between civilization and horror. Small, unimpressive, absolutely vital. The humans asked for so little and gave so much. He pulled out his data pad and began writing his report to the council. But it wasn't just a report. It was a reminder, a testimony. A promise that this generation wouldn't forget what the humans did or why the Accord existed. Terran space would remain off-limits, not because the law demanded it, but because respect required it. And perhaps, Rian thought, that was the greatest tribute the galaxy could offer. To honor humanity's sacrifice by honoring their wishes. To leave them alone, so they could keep standing in the dark.